I'm sure when you started telling people about being divorced,
Yeah.
there were things people said to you that you were like, don't fucking say that to me, whether it was like advice or things you should do. So what are some things that people shouldn't say or do, like for someone going through a divorce?
I think a lot of times people, even if this isn't their real opinion, they think it's comforting to be like, I never liked that person anyway.
Oh, I saw that on an article I looked up
Yeah.
to possibly do. It was like, don't trash their ex.
No, because it's like, ultimately what you're saying is like, hey, I know you're really sad, but like if it makes you feel any better, you also have poor judgment.
It makes you feel any better. That's why we didn't
And I was
invite
lying to you for the past 7 years about what I thought of this person.
Yeah, that's why. Like, remember that barbecue I had, and you probably thought, "Why wasn't I invited?" It's like because
Yeah.
I didn't like your wife.
Right.
Just want you to know, it wasn't you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Because then it's like the simultaneous thing of like, first of all, did you really think that? Secondly, why didn't you say anything? Third of all, like, you know, it just, yeah, it was, I found that to be strange.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Shooters Gotta Shoot. I am your host, Eric Aspera, and we have a great episode for you guys this week. But before we get to our guests, real quick, if you're here watching on the YouTube, just subscribe, all right? You're already here, okay? I see the numbers. We need our subscribers up, all right? Just hit the button. It's a free thing you could do for the show. Another thing you could do, you could leave us a rating on iTunes, Spotify podcasts, wherever you like to listen to podcasts. You can check us out there. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to our guest this week. You might have seen him on MTV or Comedy Central. He just released an album called Statistically More Relatable. It's our divorce expert of the day. Put your hands together for the very funny Adam Mamawala.
Oh, thank you so much. That's how I asked to be introduced at all my shows. You may have seen this guy filing papers. Keep it going for Adam Mamawala.
Yes, our divorce expert means Adam has gone through a divorce.
Yes.
That's all it means.
Yeah.
You are our first male guest who has gone through a divorce. So I am very excited to have you. So thank you for coming on.
Of course.
And sharing all your trauma with us.
Yeah, it was
today.
all worth it for this.
I figured it would be. So real quick, I got some divorce stats.
Great.
I'm going to throw out for the fans.
Perfect.
Okay? Because I thought the divorce rate in general in America has declined. And true, it has declined, but not a ton.
Okay.
All right, so both marriage rates and divorce rates in the U.S. are decreasing. So for every 1,000 people, the marriage rate dropped from 8.2 to 6.1.
Okay.
All right. So less people getting married. And then right in line with that, the divorce rate dropped from 4.0 to 2.7. So both went down 2 points. And then they literally, in this article, the next stat was about 50% of marriages in the United States will end in divorce or separation. So overall, it really hasn't changed.
Overall, it's definitely a calculated risk. But no one thinks their marriage is going to be the one that ends in divorce. That's what we've learned, right?
Well, it's like if I gamble, I'll play roulette. I don't bet on numbers. I bet on the 50-50 odds. I bet black. I bet red. I bet odd. I bet even.
Sure.
And I feel like, well, this is a safe bet.
So then in this scenario, would just a separation without a legal divorce just be landing on green?
Yeah,
landed on the other one?
It's just like, well, no one wins.
That is true. No one wins. Yeah, that's true. That checks out.
So this is a fun one, okay? Another stat I'm going to throw out here. So 41% of all first marriages end in divorce.
Okay.
60% of second marriages end in divorce. And do you want to take a guess at third marriages?
I bet it's even higher.
So we got 41 for first, 60% for second. What do you think is for third marriages?
I'm going to guess like 70%.
Ooh, 73. Nailed it. Okay. 73%.
But you know what? At that point, I almost respect the optimism of someone who gets married like a seventh time. Like, why do you think it's going to be different?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's people that just keep buying scratch-off tickets.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, I mean, it's my last dollar again this week, but it might turn it around. Yeah, and then the U.S.
It's just like a Russian nesting doll of your savings. Just like it's smaller and smaller and smaller with every divorce.
Literally. Well, maybe that's why people just keep getting married. They're like, well, lost everything already.
Right.
What else am I going to do?
Yeah, I have like a bit that I'm working on about how there should be divorce registries. Like, how are we not doing that?
I mean...
It's a great idea.
I mean, I've been talking about there should be a registry just of all the weddings I've gone to. like if like I've started going to weddings at 20 and now I'm 31,
Right.
then I'm like, I should just get to have a registry that's just like, hey, I am single income and I pay for all my shit myself. So how about you guys throw $100 this way, huh?
Wedding guest registry.
Like pay me back.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because like after 10 years, I'm like, inflation's going to hit sometime.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not really going to get my gift back. So I feel like you should give it to me now. I feel like that's fair.
I think that's fair.
Right? I think it's more than fair. My mom will cringe hearing this, but whatever. We're doing our best. Okay, so let's give a little background. People, I'm going to ask you a couple questions here. So you got divorced officially, legally, all done, right before everything shut down.
I quite literally picked up my final judgment of divorce on March 12th, 2020. March 12th. That was like the day after the night that the NBA stopped and Tom Hanks had COVID.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That was perfect timing, really. I mean, what better time to become single?
Oh, what better way to just self-reflect for 2
yeah.
years?
Just to move back in with your parents for 4 months.
Oh, man. Well, prior to officially being done legally, when did you guys make the decision to call it quits?
Basically like June of the previous year. So like June of 2019 is when I would say we were like officially separated.
Okay. And when you guys went through everything, it did not go to court. It was
No.
settled
It went through
outside.
lawyers, but it did not go to court.
Well, it's always going to go through
It
lawyers.
doesn't always. You'd be
Really?
surprised. It is possible to not do it through lawyers, but it's an effort.
Did you try to not do lawyers at the gate?
No.
Smart
I
man.
didn't- yeah, I mean-
Smart man.
Yeah.
So basically a year, which really
Mm-hmm.
isn't that bad.
What do you mean? Like from start to finish?
From officially deciding, right?
Yeah.
Or not even a full year, June and then March.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I had heard horror stories of like, oh, this could drag on for years.
Yeah, it can.
So yeah, from what I'm told, especially in New York, that was pretty quick to like, we signed divorce papers on September 10th. Because I remember that week having a joke about how 9/10 was my 9/11. But so it was basically like exactly 6 months from when
Yeah.
we signed the papers to when everything was finalized.
And when you officially were like, okay, this is not going to work anymore. Obviously, you were living together. You had been, how long were you married for again?
Married for like 2.5 years at that,
2.5
or like almost 3 years at that point.
Right, but you had been together.
Been together for like, if you include the marriage, it's like between 7 and 8 years.
Right, so it was
Yeah.
a long time. So the day it was finally like, okay, it's not working.
Yeah.
Did you move out immediately? What were like next steps that you took?
It was a little tricky because obviously we were living together at the time. We didn't like own a place or anything like that because I'm a comedian. But we...
Hey, she could be doing better.
Yeah, she's doing fine. Essentially,
I meant financially, not of a person. I meant the pressure's not on you to buy the apartment,
Yes, of
Adam.
course,
That's what
of
I
course,
meant.
of course.
Okay, we are an equality podcast here.
Yeah, but basically throughout a lot of May and early June of that year, I was very nomadic because it was like a lot of ups and downs, and I essentially kept getting like kicked out of the apartment, and then she would change her mind, and I would come back, and we would try to work on things, and then I'd leave and sleep on a couch again. So like basically, the last time that I actually lived there was like early June of that year, and then I officially moved all my stuff out at the end of June.
There you go.
Yeah.
And did you go home, or did you have a place?
No, I moved into the apartment that I'm in now.
Oh, okay.
But in that interim, I was like, I spent some time with my parents. I spent some time with comics,
Yeah.
I was like sleeping on people's couches. I spent some time sleeping in Mike Albanese's apartment, where it was like 2 other comics and then an old Indian man who looked like my dad. It was like the most surreal experience of my life. It was
Sorry to
genuinely
laugh at your
insane.
face.
No, it was absurd.
I want to. I don't know if this is too personal to ask, but what made you finally kind of throw in the towel of like, okay, we've been working on figuring this out.
Right.
What kind of was that final thing that made you be like, okay, this is 100% done. Divorce is the answer.
I mean, I'll say this as diplomatically as I can, but like, if things are going to be worked out, both parties need to be trying to work them out. And I feel like once it became clear that that was not the case, and also I at a certain point I felt like I had been like put through so much that I was like, what am I holding on to here?
Yeah.
And the other thing too, and I'm sure you've experienced this with relationships, is like when things are starting to get bad and you start widening that net of who you're talking to about it, at a certain point, if you get back with that person, all of your friends and family are gonna be like, what are you doing? So that I think factored into it as well, where I was like, I would be embarrassed to tell the people who are close to me that I'm going back into this relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you start emailing podcasts, you know?
Right.
Or like, let me get advice from this single girl,
Oh,
Erica
gosh.
Spira in New
Well,
York.
No,
Maybe
but
she knows about divorce. She can help me.
Well, I think, by the time it was finally brought up, like, we should get a divorce, I was like, sure.
Yeah. You're just like, I've been beaten down too much. You're like, yes, honey.
Sure. Yeah.
My last yes, honey, of the relationship is,
Right,
I think we should get divorced. You're like, you know what? That sounds like a great idea, babe.
Yeah.
All right, let me know what you need from me. Just.
Yeah.
What would you say was the hardest part about going through it?
I mean, none of it was pleasant. I think, like, when you've been with someone that long, you're like addicted to them to some degree, just out of how much you see them, how much time you spend together. And I remember that feeling of like when we would go on these breaks and there were these periods where, you know, we would agree like we're not going to text each other, we're not going to call each other. Like this compulsion to reach for my phone the same way someone who like smokes wants to reach for a pack of cigarettes. Like it's just so ingrained to be able to talk with that person. So I feel like when that went away, that was tough. But also like, I don't know. I think for me, people perceive me to be someone who's like got everything together and is like very well adjusted and all of this. And I feel like there was a certain amount of shame that I had about like people see me in a certain way and I'm like not living up to that.
That's one of my questions I had actually for you was, did you feel a lot of shame around just like, oh, I now am a divorced man, or almost feeling like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it almost feels like when relationships don't work out in general, I feel this thing of like, what did I do wrong and what could I have done better? And like, is this on me? You know?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had a lot of reflection around like what part I had in like us getting to that point.
Yeah.
As far as shame, it was more like I come from a very, as you do, like I come from a very tight family. And that's not to say that like children of divorce get divorces without thinking twice about it. But like I didn't really have much context for it because like no one who's really close to me is divorced. I don't come from a family where that happens a lot. My dad's side of the family is Indian. Like Indian people just don't get divorced basically.
Yeah.
Also,
there's no quitting the team.
Well, there are different expectations when you are set up with your cousin, but you just got to make it work. You know, I mean, we all have hot cousins. What are you going to do?
Because you're going to have to see them the rest of your life anyway.
Exactly. I mean, you share the same grandpa. It's going to be hard to not run into them at functions.
Exactly. It's the only way to keep those Indian wedding numbers down, you know?
Well, it's not working because they're massive, but at least they're short. Only 2 weeks.
Yeah, you know, just a family reunion.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like I ever thought that when I brought this up with my parents, they would be like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? You're going to bring shame on our family. And how could, like, they were, and have continued to be incredibly supportive. And ultimately they were like, we love you. Like, we care about you.
Yeah.
We want you to be in a situation that's good and that you're happy in. And if that means staying in this marriage, then good. And if it means not being married anymore, then we want that for you also.
Right. Or also your parents like know you well,
right,
and trust you, and also are like, yeah, we figured you tried.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Course.
Like, and I feel like this might be a male-female difference. I feel like a lot of women that are like, I'm getting divorced, it's immediately like, well, did you try doing this?
Yeah.
Or like, da-da-da, or like there's this weird thing of like, were you a good wife? And it's like, how about I'm just not happy? It's just not working.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
And I'm sure there are situations where people don't try or they've like made their mind up already.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And it's like no one's perfect, obviously. But yeah, it's just, I mean, thank God they said that. But yeah, I would think, because I know you, and it's like I didn't know you were going through like problems in your relationship, and we're good friends.
Yeah.
Until essentially it was literally about to end.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's like I was pretty close to the vest about a lot of it because I also was aware of the fact that like if I didn't know how things were going to end, I didn't want to be telling everybody about it or talking about it on stage or any of that. I would rather keep it really close. And then like once I knew that it was over, then I was talking about it like immediately on stage and telling people about it. But
in general, as the person in the relationship, you learn the most about the relationship when it ends and about the other person. Like that's really when true colors come out typically, right? But also even more so, the people around you really learn what was happening. Like it's always, and that's something that comes up often when you talk about being like jealous of other relationships. Like I'm single and it's like, yeah, sometimes I'm jealous of like my brother's with someone, my sister's with someone. Like you're like at a wedding, you're like, oh, everyone's paired off. But the truth is like, you don't know what is going on behind closed doors.
No, especially not in the age of social media where like anyone posts is how perfect their life is. Like I guess there must be like 3 people in the world whose real lives are the same as what they project. But for most people, it's like, oh, this is me just keeping up appearances.
Yeah, and you know what is kind of fucked up?
What's that?
I think that both when people post happy things, but there's also the trend now of people will like post when they're sad and crying, like a video of them crying. And is it bad that I go, they're not that fucking sad? Like, I don't
No,
buy
I get it. Yeah, it's hard
I'm
not to be
like,
jaded because it like feels manipulative.
Like I'm like, if you were really sad and depressed, I don't think you'd be filming your face right now.
Right.
And posting it on. Like, you're like, people need to see this and for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but it's just, I've had very sad days and I'm like, oh, the last thing I'm doing
is putting a camera
sharing
in my
that
own face.
with anyone. I'm not even the type that like when I cry, I call somebody.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to go be by myself for a minute, you know?
Right.
Like, no one could even understand me if I called
Well,
them.
and that's like, I had a real debate with myself. I don't know if you recall this, but like at a certain point, maybe like a year after all this, like everyone knew, you knew, like my friends knew what was happening.
Yeah.
But I hadn't like told people in a public way. And like, I'm not that important. I don't have that kind of following that I need to make like a public service announcement. But I also wanted to start sharing some of the material I've been working on. I didn't want to just like drop that on people without giving them context. So I essentially like came out as divorced online. But I really like labored over whether or not I wanted to do that because I didn't want people to think of it as self-serving or as like attention seeking or any of that.
How did you come out about being divorced?
It was the classic, like, here's a thread about like what I dealt with in the past year.
Okay.
I tried to frame it in a way where it was like a, it gets better sort of thing. Like, this is where I was at. This is where I'm at now. And for anyone, this was like in the middle of 2020. So like there was a lot of awful stuff happening.
Right.
And I kind of framed it in the way of like, if whatever you're feeling right now, it feels permanent, it's not. Like you'll be okay.
That can also be seen as negative. Someone's like happy in their relationship. You're like, well, it's not permanent.
Yeah, it's not gonna last.
It's not permanent. Just want you to know.
Whether you're happy or you're sad, life is short, then you die. So
yeah, just so you know, you might get jumped.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You might think it's great. You might think you found the one.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Okay, I'm curious. I'm sure when you started telling people about being divorced, there were things people said to you that you were like, don't fucking say that to me. Whether it was like advice or things you should do. So what are some things that people shouldn't say or do like for someone going through a divorce?
I think a lot of times people, even if this isn't their real opinion, they think it's comforting to be like, I never liked that person anyway.
Oh, I saw that on an article I looked up to possibly do. It was like, don't trash their ex.
No, because it's like, ultimately what you're saying is like, hey, I know you're really sad, but like if it makes you feel any better, you also have poor judgment.
It makes me feel any better. That's why we didn't invite you.
And I was lying to you for the past 7 years about what I thought of this person.
Yeah, that's why. Like, remember that barbecue I had, and you probably thought, why wasn't I invited? It's like, because I didn't like your wife.
Right.
Just want you to know, it wasn't you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Because then it's like the simultaneous thing of like, first of all, did you really think that? Secondly, why didn't you say anything? Third of all, like, I found that to be strange.
This is a very unwritten rule in relationships, and I feel like it especially happens with, I don't know, maybe family. But like, if you really don't like who someone's with and think they're bad for them, should you say something?
It's tough. It's tough because the thing is, like, people always say that they would have wanted that, but they wouldn't have been ready to hear it at that time. Like I've had friends who have dated people that like I knew for a fact were not the right person for them, and I would try to like bring it up in the delicate way. And they would get very defensive because that's what people do when they think they are with the right person.
Oh, for sure.
But it's a tough thing to, in hindsight, be like, oh, you should have told me that you felt this way about it. Because it's like, I probably wouldn't have been receptive to that. And I would have then, that could have possibly compromised our friendship.
Yeah. Like, okay, let's say when you were with your wife, I was like, something's off. I don't like this. Wife, girlfriend, whatever. And I'm your friend. What would be the way I should approach you on that? Should I wait for you to complain?
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe. No, honestly, yeah. Like, I think if you're asking me how everything is, and I'm like, it's great. Like, I'm super happy. You don't need to be prodding and being like, well, you might say that, but I've noticed that, but it also depends on what you've noticed, right? Because sometimes people are in really bad situations and they're so oblivious to it that it takes someone else bringing it to light of like, I don't know if you notice how this person talks to you, but they're constantly like undermining you and being really shitty. And it takes someone who you actually respect to tell you that, to be like, oh, I didn't.
But why that works is they're not going, I don't like them. They're like, hey.
They're pointing out behavior, not saying like, I just don't like this person.
Specific thing.
Yeah.
I actually just had a friend last night point out to me about the last person I was dating. She was like, she's like, you're very strong-willed. You're very like, you're someone that doesn't take bullshit. She's like, and you didn't from this person. She said, but I felt like your whole relationship, you were always worried about like accommodating them and like their anxiety and their feelings and da-da-da. And she's like, and there were moments you'd talk about it and I just would want to like grab you and be like, hey, be a little selfish. Yeah. Like, it's okay if you need X, Y, and Z and like say that type of thing. But it was a very interesting like how she phrased it. I was like, huh. And I could tell she was like a little on eggshells. And I was like, no. I said, I'm not agreeing with you. I'm just taking in what you're saying. I was like, because I don't disagree with you. But I was like, I essentially ended it. I was like, because they weren't doing X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, I eventually did. But I was like, yeah, you're right. At the beginning, I was very more about them being comfortable or almost like you're more concerned with them liking you than,
But I think that speaks to the fact that sometimes it takes longer for you as the person to realize the things that other people see because you're clouded by how much you care about that person.
Oh, yeah. Or like, I wasn't dating this person for years. Yeah. Like, we weren't officially together. It's like, oh, it was a couple months. That's just like, yeah, well, your observation was correct. And it didn't work out.
You happy?
Yeah, you nailed it. Congratulations. Okay, how about this? What are some things someone should say or do if their friend is going through a divorce?
I think the most important thing you can do is allow that person to be upset. Like, it's not... I am a proponent of trying to tell people that things get better and that like in the way that people would give me advice. Yeah. Like one of the things that resonated with me the most that I still refer back to is a close friend of mine at the time. He said he's also divorced and he was like, you will be amazed at how okay you will be.
Yeah. That's good advice for a lot of situations.
Totally. Yeah. I think that's kind of like evergreen advice. But it's funny the way you introduced me as like our divorce expert, but to some degree, because I am a young divorced person, a lot of people don't have friends our age who are divorced. Yeah. I have kind of become the go-to person for like, if someone's separated or they're thinking about getting divorced, I'll get messages from people or people will like pull me aside at shows and be like, hey, do you mind if I like pick your brain about something? And what I tell people is like, let yourself feel what you're feeling. Try not to like dwell in it or like find things that make you happy also that you can just to get through the day. Like I remember that feeling of like every day feeling like such a burden to just get through. Like when things were really bad, it was like, I don't want to do anything. Yeah. So to find either things that you can do that make you feel not awful for even if it's for like half an hour or to surround yourself with people who make you feel good. Yeah. I feel like that's the biggest thing. And I also would say like everyone deals with things differently, but if you can avoid the classic pitfalls of like, oh, I'm going to go like drink a bunch or I'm going to go sleep with someone or I'm going to just any of the things that are like depicted in a bad movie, like it's not going to make you feel better.
Funny, I thought that was going to be something you said for people shouldn't say, and I feel like this happens with men. Oh, interesting. With any breakup is they'll be like, you just got to get out there and like fuck someone else, man. Yeah. Like you just Let's go out and just meet other women. Yeah, like it's such.
I've tried. It's never made me feel better. It might work for some people, but like it does not work for me.
Well, that's very self-aware. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm above the theory.
No,
it just hasn't worked for me.
I feel like that is the number one thing men say to other men. Yes. And like, as I had a friend, and he refers to himself as a beta male, not me, but he's like, I'm more of a sensitive. Like he had a breakup, and he was like, and I thought I had other sensitive male friends that were like me. Yeah. He goes, and all of them, that was immediately what animals. They said. They're like, no, you got to fuck someone else. It'll help you get over it. Yeah. And he was like, what? Like he was like, I was then searching for like, who's going to give me anything but that advice? And that's who I'm going to hang out with for a while. Like, let me see. Oh, when did you know that you were ready to start dating again?
Well, it was weird because I think if you look at it from the timeline of like when we actually got separated and then when I started, I think the first like date I went on or the first time I like got a drink with someone was maybe like 3 months after I had gotten separated. Okay. It was like sometime towards the end of that summer or early fall. And I feel like on paper that seems very fast. But things had been going downhill for a long enough time that I was like, it didn't feel like it had only been a couple months to me because mentally like I kind of saw the writing on the wall for a while.
Right, like after you moved out, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, because you're like, I've been going through hell for essentially, what, a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, about? Yeah, no, I totally agree.
But I would say I was very specific with myself about like not doing the thing of like, oh, I'm going to go just try to sleep with someone. Like once I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I think I'm ready to see what it's like to go have a drink with someone. Because I mean, I hadn't done that in 8 years.
Yeah.
So just the mechanics of that. And it's not like I thought I would like be inept or I wouldn't know what to do, but it was very surreal. Like when especially when you've made the commitment to be married and you are actively saying like, this is the person that I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. The part of your brain that even entertains the idea of hanging out with someone else or going on a date with someone else, unless you cheat on people, but that's not me. Like that just it kind of was gone. So then to all of a sudden have that back was both jarring and like very exciting.
I don't know if this is too rude of a question to ask, but what was like the first thing in your relationship that you noticed like changed or started to take a downturn?
Well, I mean, I think the initial, the beginnings of it, a lot had to do with her not feeling like she was happy, not feeling like she necessarily was like thrilled about where we lived, what our lives looked like, kind of just like not aligning on things that are pretty fundamental to a relationship working and not having the same vision of like what our future was or even like where it would be.
Oh, yeah. I would say this is a big one. This is not, not
well,
a little.
I mean, in retrospect, I'm like, I would say I'm like disappointed in myself for not having had more important conversations before I got married.
See, I feel like you did because I've known you a long time, and I remember you talking about, and I hope this is okay, I bring it up. This is a very big thing. I remember you talking about like, you know, we're in New York. You were getting married. You were like my, you know, fiance, girlfriend at the time. Doesn't love New York. Doesn't want to be here forever. And you were like, and I get that of like, okay, we want to have kids, blah, blah. Yeah, I would like to have a house, and you were looking at the options of like house in Jersey, Long Island, whatever. So, but you basically were like, yep, we're gonna do New York for a couple years, and then probably move to a house somewhere. And I was like, no, okay, but like to me, I was like, yeah, that's a valid like I think you were having those big combos of you were like, I remember you specifically being a very caring and nice partner that you were like, I understand she's not 100% happy here,
right?
And you were like, would stand up, being in the city's great, but like you were willing to compromise of like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to commute longer to shows. Yeah, it won't be as easy for me to do a spot last minute, but kind of like, so what? I want my wife to be happy,
right?
You know?
The thing that's interesting about hearing you recall that, like I don't, you know, specifically remember that conversation, is that when I hear that told back to me, it makes me ask, like, did I really think that, or had I like convinced myself that that was what I needed to do to keep her happy? Because like where I'm at now, and obviously I'm at a very different place than where I was 6, 7, 8 years ago. Like I love New York. I don't have any intention of leaving New York.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, was I saying that to appease someone?
I mean, I know you. I think if you were still with this person, you would have moved.
Yeah, maybe.
I think you would have, because you would go, okay, I love New York, but my wife's not happy, and this is something that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do, like for my life and my career. I think you would have at least tried it. Let me put it that way.
Yes. No, and I did. I mean, as things were deteriorating, I remember even like offering, like, look, maybe we've been in New York for too long. Like, maybe it's time to look at, like, if that would make you happier, if that would be something that we could do to like improve our relationship. Maybe, you know, within reason, like maybe we look at moving to New Jersey or wherever it is.
Yeah, something. I mean, especially, shit, if you were still together and then the world shut down and it was like, where everyone's fully remote, like, all that stuff, it's kind of like, yeah, why not? Why not? So many people made the move for more space. Yeah,
for sure. But I mean, I don't know if that fully answered your question. When things, the indication that things like really were going downhill rapidly was when there was like mistrust happening and like accusations of things. Yeah. None of which were founded in reality. But
well, especially like there's so many questions we've like debated on this podcast, right? That are with dating. And I feel like so many of these questions have just come up with technology increasing from the 8 years you were together, right? Yeah. So like, I would bet you have never been in this situation before your, you know, wife of like, oh, I want to look through someone's phone, or someone like looking through your phone, like something on like that level. Right. That like, yeah, I can't imagine like never experiencing that in dating, and then suddenly you're married and you feel like stuff goes downhill and something like that happens. Where you're like, what the hell is it? Like, you're my wife. Right. Like, you want to look through my stuff? Okay. Yeah. Like, you know? Yeah. Like, I look at my parents and it's like, obviously they're much older, but it's like, there's never been this like,
Sonny's active on the Facebook. Oh, come on, I mean.
No, but there's never been like
we DM every now and again.
I know.
Usually about the Mets, but
I know everything and teeth.
Yeah.
He's crazy. But no, but like it's more like seeing my parents. There isn't this privacy with phones.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no like what.
My
What do you
parents
need, my
share an email
passcode?
address.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it's so like technology to them is not a private
Right.
thing. They're just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
we're married.
Yeah.
That's like you know, if my parents didn't get so many emails, they'd have a joint email. You know, like shit like that. It's just very like no. I guess there's no like bar of entry where like nowadays people probably are like, why does your partner need your passcode to your phone? Like, do they? You know, what are they going to look
and
through?
I
It's like,
don't know how you feel about this, but I think my view on it is like, if you or you know, if my partner were to look through my phone, I would be quite confident there would be nothing to find. But I also wouldn't want to be with someone who would want to look through my phone.
See, I feel like everyone will always find something that
Sure.
maybe bothers them. If you like really read every fucking text and
Yeah.
DM, and not saying that like, you know, that means all of us are out here flirting with people in the DMs, but it's like, yeah, I'd probably shit talk to you at one point to somebody through a text message.
Yeah.
Like, you know, spare me, you know, or even just like fucking group chats. It's like stuff gets wild in there sometimes,
Right.
and you might make a joke, and they might just be like, you know, I don't like you making jokes like that.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, that's me and my friends. Like,
Sure.
you know, like there should be some barrier, I guess. But yeah, it's just, I can't imagine like essentially not having those technology problems and then
Right.
suddenly feeling like, oh, there's now like a super invasion of all my privacy. And you're like, I live with you.
Yeah, yeah.
What? What can I hide from you? Okay, looking back, is there anything you wish you knew before going through all this, or anything that you would maybe do differently?
Knew about that
I
person?
guess the process, like divorce
Uh,
in general, I guess.
Not necessarily. I mean, honestly, I feel like I kind of lucked out in terms of how, I don't want to say easy the process was, but like in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of getting a divorce, it was not as bad or as expensive as I had been told it could be. So I did, and part of that might be that I just like, we didn't have a lot of assets. Like
Yeah.
I am sure if you have kids or if you like own a house together, it becomes very expensive and tricky. But yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have a great answer for that.
Do you mind if I ask you?
Yeah, what's up?
How much did it cost you personally to get divorced?
Shockingly cheap. I would say the total was like less than $5,000.
Really?
Yeah, it was like 4,000.
That's way less than I would think. I would think like 10 grand.
I don't even want to say this person's name because then he'll be harassed by people who want a cheap divorce. The divorce lawyer who I used is like the single nicest person in the world. Like when I first had a call with him, he was like, I think I can help you out. I want you to know, like, I'm sure you've heard things about lawyers that like people charge by the hour, by the minute, whatever. He's like, you need anything at all? Give me a call. He's like, this is what the flat rate is. Like whatever you end up
Really?
needing, this is what the rate is going to be. And he stuck to his word and was like incredible.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
Has this man gone through a divorce?
Probably, yeah. You'd think so, right?
He has to.
Yeah.
There's no way a lawyer's that nice,
No,
especially
yeah.
with the money.
You don't have that kind of empathy unless you've been through some shit.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
where he was like, listen, I got real fucked on
Yeah.
mine, so I got a nice flat rate for
Right.
nice guys like me.
Yeah, it's like he found out his wife was cheating on him with like 20 guys, and he's like, I'm going to make it my life's work to
Yeah.
help men in similar situations.
Yeah, I was like, also, like, because you're such a nice person, like, you would get, like, the nice lawyer. You would somehow find the nice lawyer. But it is crazy of, like, I've only had a couple conversations with lawyers of, like, looking
Yeah.
into getting, like, something, you know, legalized with, like, the podcast and stuff.
Right.
And even then, it's like, man, they're just fucking sharks, dude. Like, it made me, I was just like, man, I don't think I'm ever going to go on a date with a lawyer. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Like, it just made me be like, oh, God, like,
Yeah.
I don't know the law well enough. That
Unless
if
it's like
this
a
goes-
civil rights lawyer, I think maybe a no-go.
Yeah, I don't. No, nothing. No, I want my person knowing nothing about the law. But it just made me be like, oh man, if I'm in a marriage and I'm married to a lawyer and they know it's ending before I do,
Oh, yeah.
I'm fucked.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
my stuff will be gone.
You're not getting
It'll-
anything.
I don't know where it will go, but it would all just be taken away. Okay. Let's do some fun dating questions.
Okay,
in
yeah.
general. I think that's enough about divorce talk. Unless are there
Whatever
any,
you want.
Are there any divorce questions you wish I asked you, or anything you feel like you should let the fans know?
I guess the one thing that so I'd be very interested to know how my perception differs from a woman's perspective who's divorced. But like one thing is when I got divorced, there was this part of me that was like, I know intellectually that a lot of people are divorced. I get it. But there was this part of me that was like, is this going to be an impediment to me as I get back out into the world? Like, is this going to be like this weird scarlet letter of like, oh, is this divorce guy? And this probably won't surprise you. Not at all. Like,
No,
if anything, it is so much more of a red flag to meet someone who's my age, who's never been in a serious relationship, than to meet someone who's divorced. Because it's like, well, it didn't work out, but at least this guy like knows how to commit to something. So it was not a thing at all.
Well, I was going to say, how old are you? Are you 35?
I'm 35, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's something of, we call them time thieves.
And
it's men that are a certain age that one, date way younger.
Sure.
Is typically like, yeah, because they're not worried about wasting your time, right? But two, it's like, yeah, if they're a certain age and they've never really been in a relationship, there starts to be this stigma of just like, why? You know, like, is it them? Or are they a commitment? Like, with men, it's more a commitment. It's like, they just don't want to commit.
Yeah.
But it is a weird thing of like, you know, I'm 31. I have never been in like a serious long-term relationship. But it's not that I'm commitment phobic or I don't want to be. But it's funny that you touched on a red flag that I'm like, oh, a lot of just people that are single feel that. They're like, I weirdly feel like I have a scarlet letter, surprisingly not from herpes, but just from being like, oh, like with that question when people go, what was your last relationship? I'm like, okay, technically I've dated people that like are an ex, but then when they're like, how long? I'm like, 3 months. Like, it's like, what? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Huh?
That's what? What? You know, just a semester. Just, you know. Had a nice time.
When that's your increment, that's a red flag.
I got that credit. I got
just a marking period.
Yeah. I've done relationship 101 twice. It's like what I got. All right, let's do some more fun dating questions, I guess. All right, so what is something that confuses you about women?
Well, I hesitate to paint anyone with a broad brush, but I will say that there are women that I have encountered, both friends and people I've dated or whatever, who are into game playing.
Well, yeah.
And I don't understand it or like it. Like this whole, you know, pushing someone away, and then when you push them away, hoping that they like come chase after you because that's part of like, oh, well, I want you to like show me how much you really are into me, so I'm going to like fuck with you. And then, you know, if you really wanted to be with me, then you would make the extra effort to do this or that. And it's like, no, let's just be adults.
Do you have any specific examples of like?
Not like recently, but I definitely can remember there being times, I think with like less mature people, and probably like my earlier dating, where it's like, oh, well, like when I said that, like I wanted you to react this way. It's like, stop trying to get me to react. Like, just tell me what you want from me. Yeah, no,
okay. Let's discuss this. All right.
Rant coming.
No, have you ever heard the saying, if he wanted to, he would?
No, but I could infer what that means.
Right. It gets, you know, thrown around, blah, blah. But I hate the example of, kind of similar to what you said, of a girl will post that her boyfriend got her flowers. And they're like, if he wanted to, he would. And it's like, no. The correct saying is, if he knows what you want,
right,
because you told him, and he likes you, then he will do that thing.
Yeah.
That's what the saying is.
Yeah.
But I hate when it's like a material thing like that, and like your example of, oh, well, if you really liked me, you would have reacted this way. You're like, I don't fucking know how you want me to react.
I am not a mind reader.
Yeah, I don't like it. But it's very simple. If someone goes, oh, I'd like you to call me like a couple times a week, like just at the end of the day, catch up real quick. I'm more of a call than a text person. And you only text that person. It's like, okay, yeah, that guy doesn't like you.
Yes.
Like, he's just not listening.
Right, but it's a completely different conversation if you have laid out what your expectations are and someone doesn't meet them versus hoping that person can know intuitively what you're expecting without you saying what it is. That's infuriating.
Right. But like, it's like, that's when I disagree with it. And then I agree with the saying, it's like, okay, well, when someone just goes, well, you know, if he wanted to, he would. And some girl's sitting there being like, okay, I haven't, you know, this guy hasn't done whatever, X, let's say the flowers thing. He hasn't gotten me flowers. And then someone just goes, I mean, if he wanted to, he would. It's like, no, bitch, did you tell him that's what you like and that's what you want? Like, every man I've interviewed on this podcast has been like, just tell us what you want.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, sexually, gifts, whatever the fuck. Tell us. Give me a hint.
Right.
Like, no one knows.
Assume I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
Talk to me like I'm 5. What do you want?
We all walk around like men are trash, men are dumb, and then we're like, well, he should have known. It's like,
you know,
are they dumb or should they know?
I haven't even talked about this on stage, but I was thinking recently about the concept of like, at a certain point, any man of a certain age is just an accumulation of like tips from past girlfriends.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
oh, that was the person that like taught me how to roll my sleeves up. Like,
yeah.
this is the person that advised that I shave my nose hair. Like, just all these little things. It's like, oh, I was oblivious to all of these things.
Oh, I mean, small scale. Most men, they're like, I wore this shirt out one night. I got laid. This is my best shirt now.
Yeah.
This is
it's like the blue dress in Broad City. It's like Abby's dress.
So it's so similar of like the smallest thing that was like my, ex, this really turned one woman on one time. That
So I assume it turns everyone on forever.
Yeah, I made my bed every day, and my ex was like, "God, I love that about you." And you're like, "That's gonna get me more pussy. So I'm just gonna keep making this bed."
I don't know if I would have a headboard if it weren't for my current girlfriend, and I'm ashamed of that. That's horrible. What's wrong with me? I'm an adult.
That's so true, though. And you know what's funny? I've done this.
Yeah.
Like I feel like both people do it, but it's just like, it's a little more common with men. Okay, let's see. What is something you wish women knew about men?
I think it's changed a lot because like men are not thought of the same way anymore, but yet like men are not a monolith. Like I think when people think of men as like all being the same or all like in like the negative sense of what a man can be, like being a creep or being dirty or like any of that, like I'm like a very sensitive guy. I'm sure you know that about me. So like I just don't want people to make any assumptions about my intentions.
Okay, real quick. What does a monolith mean?
A monolith means like all the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, totally. I agree.
We're multifaceted.
I was like, don't interrupt America, but I was like, fuck, I am bad with words. I will say this. Some men have taught me things. A man taught me what the word incarcerated meant because I did not know what that meant.
That just speaks to your privilege.
Uncomfortable. It does. Yeah. It does. He says to me like, well, my dad was incarcerated. I was like, oh, what's incarcerated? And he was like, in prison. And I was like, oh, cool.
Oh, I wish I hadn't asked in that tone.
Oh, okay. All right. I could have looked that up later. But it was such a fancy word. I was like, oh, damn. It's like, well, I'm not going to say his name. Shout out to that guy. Thank you for teaching me that.
Erica, was that a bad answer?
No, I don't think it's a bad answer. You're basically saying, a lot of us can have bad qualities, but we're not all, the epitome of like the super, I don't want to say masculine. That sounds bad, but I know what you mean of like kind of that like aggressive alpha energy is what I kind of got from what you said.
Right.
Because you're like, a lot of us actually are sensitive. And if anything, through like all the research we've done on the pod, there's something of like men often won't open up and be vulnerable with women unless the woman does it first. And I've straight up been like, I don't feel safe doing that because I like feel like she's going to call me a pussy.
Interesting.
But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, guys, have taught their whole lives, most of their lives. I don't know about this generation, but my generation, very much like, don't cry, suck it up, be a man. Like, there's so much more pressure on men to like hide their emotions. Yeah. And so a lot of times it's like, the minute they show it, it's like, one, their friends all make fun of them for it. Or two, I think the big fear is if they do it in front of their girl, is she going to go and tell like all her girlfriends or whoever, you know? And it's something that I'm like, it's a lot of times just privacy. Cause weirdly, the more I do this podcast, the more I'm like, I'm a fucking man, dude. I'm so much more like a guy. That like literally reading that fact, that's why it stuck with me. Is I was like, oh, I'm like that. Where like I think about people I dated and I like got soft and I was like vulnerable or just even like very sweet and very like loving. I weirdly am like, they better not be fucking telling people I did that. Like, they better not tell his friends I got him a card for no reason. Like,
oh, I'm such a card guy. You know
I know we give each other birthday cards. That's why we're friends. You know.
Yeah.
Again, if he wanted to, he would. No, I'm kidding.
Do you want a card? Tell me if you want a card.
Well, that's actually a great example. My ex never gave me a fucking card, and I gave him a couple cards because it's like we had his birthday, Christmas, whatever, right? Card person. I even gave him a card once for no reason. Okay. And then I literally remember being like, he's like, oh, you give cards. I'm like, oh, I'm a card person. I like a card. To me, that's like better than the gift. And I never got a card from him. Yeah. And I should have known then. Should have known then. I should have divorced him then. You know?
Pre-divorce.
Pre-divorce. Okay. We have a little segment on the pod I'm going to wrap up with called Man's Opinion. And that's the segment that we actually do want a man's opinion.
Okay.
We don't see you all as that fancy word you said that I can't remember.
I want you to say what you think the word is.
My brain right now is saying acronym, and that is not it.
Look,
That
men
is
are not
it.
acronyms. We're not all acronyms.
Yeah, you're not all acronyms.
Yeah.
Actually, synonyms would be the correct meaning. It
Yeah.
means the same
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
of what you said, kind of. Like our producer Fonzie is not synonymous with Adam. You guys are beautiful, different flowers. Right, Fonz?
Absolutely.
Look, do you want flowers? Or what?
Yeah, I just keep bringing it up. Someone give me some fucking flowers. I'm freaking out. Okay. All right. So we do a fun segment called Man's Opinion. That's where people write in. They want a man's opinion.
Okay.
Straight male opinion. One time we want to hear it. Okay. We have been dating for 2 years, and he hasn't said, I love you. Is our relationship doomed?
Yes.
Yeah, 2 years?
Yeah.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if this person said it, if they have said it to their partner and he has not exchanged that.
Sounds like no, but
Either
it sounds
way,
like someone who wants to say it and is too afraid.
If you're, I feel like I have been the person who's guilty of like, if not saying it too soon, like thinking it too soon, that
Yeah,
I
reasonable.
love someone or that I'm in love with someone. But 2 years, I'm if you're not sure that you feel that way about someone in 2 years, we got a time thief on our hands.
Yeah, time thief. Time thief, bitch. Leave. Thank you for emailing in.
Best of luck. It'll get better.
Okay. About how long into a relationship does it take men to say, I love you?
Well, as a man who is not a monolith, I would answer that by saying that for me, sometimes not that long, right? Like if I'm really sure about something, I trust myself enough to know that what I'm feeling is legitimate. I'm also not a psychopath, so I'm not someone who's going to like say it on the second date.
So you will think it before you say it.
Yes. I would say like the earliest I've said that to someone was within like a couple months of being with them,
Yeah, that is
which is
weirdly-
early.
That's weirdly an average for couples. It's like 3 to 5 months.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
typically when it gets said.
Yeah.
And I know people listening are probably not going to like that I just said that. But
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's been studies, and a lot of people that are married, that's how long it was. How soon have you ever felt it?
Like almost immediately.
Ooh,
Like within
love
a
first
week.
date.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I've had that.
Yeah.
I've had that, and then it died. I was like, oh no, I don't know what that
yeah,
was.
sometimes sometimes it does dissipate, but sometimes it doesn't.
So essentially, what? There's been 2 people in your life you've said I love you to, in a romantic relationship.
I mean, are we counting like, a high school relationship?
Yeah,
where
let's count it.
Okay.
So 3? Is that 3?
I think 4.
4, and
Yeah.
all of
like
them.
high school person, college person, and then
Okay, so 4.
marriage and my
And
current
all of them, would you
relationship.
say about 3 months?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
No, it's consistent. The man is consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. Should women wait for men to say "I love you" first?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think if you're, I feel like that should not be like a gendered thing necessarily. Like if you feel that way about someone and you're confident that they feel that way too and they're going to be receptive to it, you should probably share it with them. And also, if they're not, then maybe it's better that you communicate that sooner and then you both realize that you're not on the same page.
Yeah, I've heard this advice before, and I feel like it just comes from a place of like anxiety, and I get it because I've been with people where I felt it, and I was like, kind of like, oh no,
Yeah.
like because you're like, I don't know if they feel the same way,
Yeah.
and your biggest fear is if I say it, will they just say it because I said it?
Yeah, I've done that once in my life. Once in my life, someone said, I love you to me. And I like said it back because I didn't know what to do. And I
Right.
didn't love that person.
Yeah,
And then it's hard to backtrack from that.
tough,
Yeah.
very tough.
But like, how do you leave someone? I mean, what are you going to do? The Harrison Ford, like, I love you. I know.
I think the common rejection is thank you,
Eesh, yeah.
which
yeah.
I don't know how to.
But I think that, like, for me, the way I define like actually like being in love, it's a very ridiculous term that I've come up with. I call it the jumpies. You know that feeling in your heart that you get where like every time you see someone, even like months into being with them, you get that like feeling in your chest.
Excited?
If you don't,
Yeah.
well, excited, but like on a very high level. If you don't have that, I'm not saying like if you don't, you're not in love with someone, but like for me personally, if I don't have that, I know it's not the person.
Like for long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's
And
something.
you can't create it.
Yeah, it's funny because they say like butterflies a lot of times are actually like your body telling you something's bad,
Oh, interesting.
and it's like hinging on anxiety.
Right.
But it's but I don't fully agree with that because I'm like, well, there's something to being excited to see someone. And I do think for women, it can grow. A lot of times for men, it doesn't grow as much. But like, yeah, it's like anyone I've really dated, it's like there was excitement early where I was like, oh shit, like looking forward.
And what I'm saying is like, I've had that feeling about someone and then it doesn't work out or I get to know them better and it's like clear that we're not actually compatible. But if it's not there at the beginning, it's going to be very hard for me to find that later.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Does a man's financial situation influence his desire to want to be in a relationship?
Well, I mean, you're clearly asking for a man's perspective, but like, I think everyone's financial situation has some bearing on how much they feel like they need or want a partner. But it also depends on like how you look at money, right? Like if you're the sort of person who says like, even if I got married to someone, I'd rather keep our finances separate because like, that's just how I am, then it probably doesn't matter. Right. But especially if you're in a situation where male or female, you kind of are, someone who wants someone who's more stable than you or like makes more money than you or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know. I think, what do you think about that? That's an interesting question. I know you're asking from my perspective.
I think a lot of men, the actual commitment part a lot of times does hinge on their financial situation, of them feeling secure and confident in their situation. And I've talked to, actually we interviewed John Fish, another great comic, and he talked about for a long time he was commitment phobic because he wasn't happy with like how much money he made. And it's not like he's a broke guy by any means, but he felt this pressure of like, my father's, a doctor and does really well. And I always felt like I need to be making a certain amount of money before I could get married. And I'm like, that's unfortunately a pressure that I think men feel more than women. Yeah,
I think, and hopefully that's changing a bit, but I've definitely felt that before where it's like, is someone going to think what I do or what I make is inadequate? That's even, especially now, like when I think about whether or not I would even want to have kids, like a huge part of that conversation for myself is like, could I even afford it if I wanted to?
Right. And I think for a lot of men, that's the reason they'll hold off on like marriage commitment. It's because it's like, a lot of times the train gets moving, you can't stop the train. So it's like, okay, well, if you get married, then it's soon going to be kids. And if you don't feel financially ready for kids, you're going to maybe want to hold off on the marriage part. Right. Which I get. It makes sense.
Well, and I also, even dating, like even for getting a relationship, like I would say, I mean, it was like comically bad timing, but for the first couple months of 2020, that was like the first time that I really felt like I was like, oh, I feel like pretty much like a normal person again. I'm ready to start like actually dating.
Yeah.
And during that period, obviously you're going on a lot of first dates. It's generally the expectation that like the guy is going to pay for that, which is fine. But like, if I'm going out to some bar on the Lower East Side and I'm like, I don't have the kind of life where I can just like drop $100 2 or 3 times a week without thinking twice about it.
Right, exactly.
And that started to give me anxiety also of like, I'm not going to like ask someone to split the bill with me. But it was like, I was like, I don't know if I can financially afford trying to date right now.
Yeah, no, valid point. And I even say that to women of like, if they complain about splitting the bill and stuff, I'm like, if you can't afford whatever the amount is, so if you say split the bill, average date $30 each. Yeah. I'm like, if you can't afford $30 on a date, then maybe you shouldn't be going on the date either. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm the type, I'm like, no, I bring cash on dates. And it's the only time I have cash on me. Because if the date is bad or I feel I can just leave cash and leave. Like, that's my ultimate. I'm like, I got the cash. I can fucking go if I want to. Yeah. And basically be like, I don't know anything. This is for me. I'll see you later. You know? Right. Like, I don't got to get your Venmo. I don't have to talk to you any longer. I'm out.
But do you feel like it like impacts the dynamics in a relationship? Like, if one person makes dramatically more than the other person, do they inherently hold some sort of power?
I hate to say this, but I think a lot of times women will have more expectations when they make more money than their male partners. Excuse me. I don't know for same-sex relationships if people would feel that way, but I find this is also the part that men are better at, is if they make way more money, there's usually not at all this kind of chip on the shoulder about it. Like, it's just kind of like, I got it.
But do you think that's because, like, historically men just made more money? So.
Yeah, and also we're expected to.
Right.
So I think that's a societal thing. I think that just, and I've felt it. Actually, I don't know if I've ever told this story on the pod of I was dating someone and I made a little more money than them, right? And we were like out one night walking around or something. I think I had a show and I was just like hungry and we were in the West Village. And I was like, oh, I'm hungry. I want some food. And I was like, oh, let's like get some food. I'm like, oh, how about this place? This looks good. And he said, and was just honest. He's just like, he's like, honestly, I can't, like, money's a little tight right now and I can't afford that. And I was like, oh, don't worry, I got it. Like, I was like, I'm hungry. Just kind of like, we'll split something, whatever. You know, I was like, don't worry about it. I'll pick up the tab. I don't care. Right. Yeah. Then later, we're like waiting for the train to go home or something. And he's with me and whatever. And then we get on the train. I lived off the E train at the time, Astoria, Queens. And we get on the train and he goes, that's what that smell is. And I go, what? He goes, man, the other day he was like, you smelled like something and I didn't know what it was. He goes, I swear to God, he's like, oh, you smelled like the E train.
What the fuck?
Okay, right. Okay. So he said that to me and I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, like, I don't know if like your coat or something, but you like smelled like the E train. And the first thought I had in my head was, I just fucking paid for dinner and you're going to tell me I smell like the E train?
That's the most you've ever sounded like Sebastian Maniscalco right now. This guy's telling me I smell like the E train. But it was so just
like
paid for dinner.
But it was such a thing that I was like, I just fucking treated.
That's insane.
And I'm being treated this way.
Okay, we got the bigger conversation here. Do specific trains have specific smells?
I don't know, but I was like, are you saying I smelled bad? Like I didn't know what it meant, but it was just so
That's a man who has so much trouble affording an Uber that he knows the specific smell of every train. That is wild.
But I just like
you slept with him, right?
No. Well, you know, it's so funny. Well, we were obviously sleeping together. We were dating.
Oh my God.
But I was just sitting there being
insane.
like, you're coming to my apartment and I just paid for dinner. And you know what I did actually probably that was for the best? I literally was just so mad. I just got dead quiet and I was very much just like staring in my own zone. And then he just was like sweating and panicking and the whole ride like trying to like crack a joke and be like, oh, are we over that train coming? And I just was like, I'm so mad.
That's the most like out of pocket thing I've ever heard someone say.
Bro, that hurt bad. And it's one thing of like someone that is a good friend or good partner of like, oh, if your breath smelled or something, or if they were like, hey, your coat kind of smells, like tell them. I would love to know in the moment, but I just was sitting there like, did this bitch just tell me I smell like the E train?
Wow.
Like, and expect me to be like, oh, how funny. Like, and I just was sitting there being like, I just paid for a nice dinner. But it was such a like, I don't know if a man would have immediately thought about paying for dinner. Yeah. But that's immediately where my mind went.
I could not be more surprised at where this story went. I thought it was going to be a story about how like he felt emasculated that you bought him dinner, blah, blah, blah.
No, but I just meant like,
if anything, he felt emboldened to tell you about your smell.
Yeah. But it was such a like.
That's psychotic.
But I like look back and I go, oh, I had an extra chip because I was sitting there being like, and I just fucking paid.
Yeah.
Like, I kind of like, how many women do you know like take their man out to a nice dinner? Not a ton. You know, like it's typically the man always pays and like even through the relationship, it's like that's the one thing like men are like, oh, when it's date night, I pay whatever, right? Whatever your dynamic is. But I'm like, damn, I'm like a great fucking girlfriend that I like occasionally want to treat you. And that's what I get. Like I was like, how do men put up with this shit?
I'm flabbergasted.
Like
that's one of those like where as that sentence is coming out of his mouth, in his mind, what is the best case scenario of how that goes?
I don't know.
But you're like, oh, what a nice observation. Thank you for that.
I don't know. And it's something that it's like, I am not the person that sits there and goes, oh, the man pays, like you owe them anything, right? Mm-hmm. However, if I just got taken to a nice dinner or a nice date, in no way would I be like, let me criticize this person, even on a small level. Wild. It'd be like, you know what? Tonight's probably not the night for me to bring up the thing that annoyed me because we're having a nice night. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, oh, I'm going to watch that dude like drop like $200 or something. Yeah. And then I'm going to be like, by the way, can I just criticize you real quick? Can I just nag you about something? I think now's the time. Now that the bill's already paid.
Wow.
Let me be a pain in the ass.
That's amazing.
Right?
Jeez.
It didn't work out.
Well, but hearing stuff like that, like when I first went on a couple dates with people, I was fine. I was like, I'm killing it. I'm doing really well. But then I realized like it wasn't about me doing anything. It was just like what these people have been through. Like I feel like if you're a woman in New York, it sounds horrible.
It's so true though.
At a certain point, just like not being a psycho is already like better than half of the dates people have been on.
Yeah, I remember you asking me when you started dating again, you were like, I've never been on a dating app. Like, you were like, do you think I do well on there? And I was like, Adam, I'm like, you're nice and you're cute. Yeah, you'll be fine. Like, I was like, do you know some of the messages I get? I was like, yeah if you just talk to women a little and listen, you can get laid pretty easy.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not
But the
that
crazy
hard.
thing is the bar is so low that I feel like just by like not being an asshole, people have gotten the wrong impression. Like I'm the sort of person,
Yeah.
you probably observed this, like if you text me, I'm going to text you back in like 2 minutes, unless I'm like in the middle of something.
When you see
I'll
it.
always like text back immediately. But even that alone, in and of itself, it's like, oh, this guy must be like really interested. He's responding right away. It's like, no, I'm just being a person. I'm just being polite.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's with any date of like, especially if you are doing a lot of online dates, like most of my dates are online if I go on dates. I don't typically get asked out in public or whatever, right? And it's like so many times they just aren't great. They're like a little draining, they're a little boring, they're whatever. And it's like, so.
Like a Zoom date?
No. Like a date in person or whatever. But it's from online.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So it's like we've never technically met, so we meet for the first time in person, right?
Yeah.
But it's very like, sometimes you leave one of those dates being like, oh my God, that was such a great date. And then like later you think about it and you're like, oh no, it just was someone that like could have a conversation and was nice and engaging.
Right.
And then you really think about it, you're like, oh, we didn't really actually connect on anything. But you just were like, yeah, they were just cute and nice. And I just had a nice time.
Yeah, it shouldn't just be a good date if the person doesn't tell you you smell like an E-train.
Yeah.
That's,
Like
the bar should be higher.
Yeah, the bar is low. It's very low that it's like, oh yeah, like that's why when people advocate like, you know, waiting to sleep with people, it's like, yeah, a lot of times it's like you go on a lot of dates that are bad. So then you finally have one that's okay. And this person's immediately like way up in the
by
ranks.
comparison, it feels
Just
great,
by
but it's actually
comparison.
just fine.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, the truth is you don't really know them that well, per se. So I'm like, you know, I'm not totally against that advice. I think we got to wrap soon. Oh, yeah, shit. Okay. I'm like, I don't know. Do you have a shooting your shot story that you want to share?
I really don't have a good one.
Okay,
it
that's
actually
all
was
right.
like embarrassing to me to think about how little of a story I would have.
But you've been like off the market forever.
Yeah.
Because even, you know, you dated for a while, but now you've been with your current girlfriend how long? About a year?
Oh, almost 2 years. Yeah.
Almost. Oh,
Year and a
yeah.
half.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, what can you do?
I mean, I'm pretty sure I like literally met her the night after we had that conversation where I was like, "Do you think I'd be okay on a dating app?"
Literally, it was after that night. We hung out on your roof. It was like COVID times.
Yeah.
And then I remember you asked me that, and then there was something else. Oh, that was actually the night that you told me a lot about your divorce that I had no idea. And I remember just sitting there like, mouth dropped open, like, oh my God, like, are you okay? Like, because if anything, I felt, and this is selfish to say, but I was in that moment, I was like, oh man, was I like not like as good of a friend as I should have been when you were going through all of that? Because it is a situation that you're like, how can I support my friend? But also you don't want to pry.
No, I mean, first of all, no, but also like it's like a matter of how much someone decides to open up to you.
Right.
Like there's no part of me that thinks if I had like reached out to you or like asked for your help or advice that you would have been like, I don't have time. Like I know that you would have because you're a good friend, but I think it was just like I was trying to keep that like circle pretty small.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so.
Yeah.
As you said, you're like, if I don't know where it's going, and then you're like, okay, it's for sure gone, and I have some stuff to fill you in.
Yeah.
It was a great night.
Yeah.
It was a fun night.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, but I remember you being like, oh, I have like a date tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, how was it going? You're like, I'm in love.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Like later the next day you were like, all right, we hit it off. I'm out the game again. Wrapping it up.
Yeah.
Actually, there's one question I want to ask you. Do you ever think you'll get married again?
It's a great question. I'm not opposed to it, but I would say at this moment, my fear of being twice divorced is a little bit higher than my desire to be married a second time.
That's fair.
Because it's like if you're divorced, you in a very real way understand that like it can and does happen. Mm-hmm. And so even if I felt very confident in the person that I was with and wanted to get married, I still think I would like have some hesitation about like,
yeah.
Because I tell you what, the goodwill out there for dating a divorced guy might dissipate a bit when you're the twice divorced guy. just a hunch.
That's when they go, it might be him.
Yeah.
It might be him.
Yeah.
I might want the other side of the story on this one. Do you still believe in love?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you
knew
when
that.
you first were divorced though, did you at least a little bit doubt it or no? Look at you. Look at you, king of optimism.
I'm a romantic.
I feel like that is a nice note to end on.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Adam has an old album that had the cover of him and his ex on it. If you want to check it out.
It has since been changed online.
It was
but
called One of the Good Ones.
Yeah.
So that album is out also if you want to check out those jokes. And then I assume this album, statistically more relatable, is going to have all the divorce jokes.
Yes.
So if you relate to this episode, you'll especially love Adam's album. And you can find it, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you can listen to an album.
Yeah,
find
wherever
an
you can
album.
listen to it. I guess it's almost like when they do like wine pairings. Like, hey, if you're happy, listen to the old album. If
Yeah,
you're,
yeah.
You know, if you're not feeling so good, you want some company, listen
Yeah.
to the new one.
Okay, and then you can find him at Adam Mamawala, which is MAMAWALA, and all his info will be in the description of this episode. You could click all those links, and you can follow us at Shooters Gotta Shoot Pod, and I'm Matt Sparica with 2 A's, and stay tuned for a Patreon preview coming up next. So thank you so much, Adam, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This was weirdly fun to talk about your divorce. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Bye. It also, man, it is so funny that I feel like every fucking online date I go on, a lot of guys bring up at some point about like having been catfished as if it's this just terrible epidemic that's happening to men, and we should just feel so bad for them being catfished. We should just feel so terrible. It's like, bro, a lot of you are fucking catfishes, okay? Like this dude, it's like, look, you're not a full catfish, but it's like, yeah, you were way cuter in your photos, for sure. If you want to hear the rest of this episode, join our Patreon, which is patreon.com/shootersgottashoot. For just $5 a month, you get all the behind the scenes exclusive content. Patreon.com/shootersgottashoot.